There are some people who have not joined us yet. Should we start? Should we wait for them a little bit? And so we will start. Distinguished guests. This is For Women project, which is part of the Ministry of European Affairs Fund program for strengthening local and national NGOs and prevention of domestic violence against women. Welcome to this international conference. In a few minutes, we will start with the opening speeches, and Berkay Eskinazi, who is the chairperson of the Liyakat Association, and she's going to give you information about the participants. Now, I would like to give you the following information. Konak Municipality is one of the partners of this project, and the Directorate for Social Policies and Women's Policies is the Executor Directorate, and Meryem Sezgin is the Director, and on behalf of the municipality, she is the representative with this project, and also I am the coordinator on behalf of the municipality, and from the beginning of this project I have been involved with this project. And right now here I am the facilitator of this international conference. This is my task today, so please, our guests should be seated. First, before I proceed to the opening speeches, I would like to give you some information about the program of the conference. So we will start with the opening speeches, and later on we will listen to our honored guest, the key speaker, Professor Dr. Yakın Ertürk. Sayın Ms. Ertürk, welcome. So she's going to hold the main speech, and after the speech there will be Q&A for 15 minutes, and afterwards we will have a coffee break. And today, why is this project an international project? Because we have some Italian project partners. They were supposed to be here with us. However, recently our country faced some troubles, some problems, and that's why they asked the foreign minister, the Italian foreign minister, whether they could visit Turkey. However, they received a reply that Turkey is not a safe country, and that's why they couldn't be with us today. However, the representative of a project partner, with her, we will have video conference. However, another representative couldn't talk to us today, won't be able to talk to us today because the chairwoman of their association has died today. And also within the framework of this project, the psychologist Sıla Derin will talk about the studies of the municipality, and she will talk on behalf of the municipality about the activities of the municipality for women. And now I would like to invite Berkay Eskinazi, who is the chairwoman of Liyakat Association. Thank you very much. For many years, this violence against women is increasing, and so in order to say stop to this violence against women, there are so many organizations, official organizations, associations, and chambers, and the chairwomen, chairpeople, and representatives of these associations and chambers. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this closing session of our project. Under the leadership of the Association of Liyakat, from Italy, Arcus, and Working in Progress. These are two NGOs. Together with these Italian NGOs and locally with the Konak Municipality and Dokuzey University, the Social Sciences Faculty, and so jointly with the aforementioned organizations, we have been running this project. And with this conference, we are approaching the end of this project. And violence against women, there are local, and this within this is a fund program, a European Affairs fund program for strengthening local and national NGOs on prevention of domestic violence against women. And this project, the name of the project is For Women Project. And for the last 2 years, we have been operating this project. And since 1960s, there have been some women movements. And with the efforts of these women movements, so the violence against women has been on the agenda of the society. And within the last 30 years, it has been accepted as one of the most important human rights violations. And under the pertaining conditions of today, just at the places where women have to be the safest, that means at their homes, they are being exposed to violence by the people who they should trust the most. That means their fathers, their partners, their brothers. So they have been subject to violence from these people. And this shows us how important this situation is. And violence. Violence pressurizes women. It makes them dependent. It eradicates their self-confidence, their self-esteem. And so for the new generations, it creates a negative example, and it damages the psychological and physiological health of children as well as women. And this is a very serious public health problem. Violence against women, unfortunately, is being seen in all types of societies, religions, or ethnic groups. However, especially in Turkey, within the last 10 years, there has been a huge increase in this violence against women. And also, the violence is no longer only physical, it is also emotional and sexual, so that it gets even deeper. Within the last 8 years, and there have been some press news regarding the violence against women, and so it has increased to, it has exceeded 35,000 last year. And so, despite all the measures which have been taken, the violence against women has not been prevented. And authorities couldn't prevent it. So that we have to support the human rights of women and to encourage the gender equality, and also in order to strengthen the women in the society. We have started this project on the 1st of February in 2014, and so this project has been operated within these last 2 years, and we have owned up this project as the Liaquat Association, and we have played a very important role in the success of this project. And within the framework of this project, we have come together with our valuable partners. And what have we done with our partners over this time? We will watch this in this film now. What have we done with our partners over this last 2 years?
İtalya ve Türkiye'deki proje ortaklarımızla birlikte İzmir'de birinci ortaklık toplantımızı yaptık.
I cannot hear well, but I will do my best in order to interpret.
Belediyelerin kadın danışma ofislerine çalışmamız
So there have been some visits to the municipalities, to the offices for women, and there has been an exchange of opinions between the partners.
8 ayrı semt merkezinde kadınlarımıza psikolojik destek.
And there is also a center at the municipality where psychological counseling can be given to women so that they can be integrated back to the society.
Kadına yönelik şiddetin tartışıldığı sokak forumlarında.
And also there have been some street games where the violence against women has been discussed. And some forums also have been organized by the Konak municipality, and so that the most effective steps have been taken. And at the end of 2014, together with our partners, we have held our 2 second meeting, and
Hayata geçirmeyi planladığımız konuları görüşmek. İzmir Büyükşehir Belediyesi'ne bağlı semt merkezinde kadın danışma merkezinde
And there's a women, a
a
shelter for women, home for women, and also a center for counseling for women under the auspices of the Konak municipality. And there have been also some surveys, and during this project, these surveys have been analyzed. And also within the framework of this project, in March 2015, there have been some seminars which have been organized for women, so that this project has gained some momentum. And when all these studies continued very fast, so we had the possibility to visit Italy in order to examine the studies of our Italian partners on site.
Sosyal operatör kavramı adı altında İzmir'de kadına yönelik şiddet
And
tedbirine, İl Emniyet Müdürlüğü'ne, sağlık sektörüne, hukukçulara, belediyelerin kadın danışma merkezi çalışanlarına ve STK'lara eğitim seminerleri veriyor.
And also some training courses have been organized for the law enforcement officials and also for health officials and legal officials. And also a seminar has been held by Professor Dr. Meltem Çiçekoğlu on the health issues with regard to the violence against women. And also some training courses have been held by women, by a lawyer.
Şiddetin önemlisi çoğu zaman kadının ekonomik bağımsızlığıyla.
And of course, how can we prevent violence? Only by creating economic independence for women. And if women can have their own jobs and if they can stand on their own feet, they can defend themselves against violence. And for this purpose, the necessary steps have been taken. And so that we have tried to enable the women to have a job. And so there has been a training for baking cakes, for example, in order to qualify them as chefs, as cooks. And these women will receive their certificates in January 2016. Our target is that these women will have their own jobs as soon as possible.
As the Liyakat Association, we try to eradicate all obstacles in front of entrepreneurship, and violence is one of those obstacles. So we say stop violence against women, and we hold our activities for this aim. So I'd like to extend our gratitude in front of you to our stakeholders who helped us, who supported us throughout the project. And from now on, in all similar public duties, we are ready to work towards the good of the society and provide active, self-confidence lives to women. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Eskinazi. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Assistant Professor İlkay Taş from the 9 Eylül University Social Science Institute for her speech. I correct, for her speech. Distinguished guests, we're very happy to see you in this closing conference. I'd like to welcome you all. On behalf of myself, I'm going to make an evaluation from the EU point of view. In Turkey, gender equality, when we look at the gender equality, what we see is as follows. When when we look at the UN humanitarian development scale, we see that Turkey stands at the 169th row. But when we look at the EU indexes, we see much more shortcomings. When we look at the progress reports, every year we hear calls to Turkey in order to ensure more gender equality in Turkey. In this year's progress report, there is a special highlight on employment because it went down to 53%, which influenced more negatively women, and this was highlighted. In Turkey, employment rate for men is around 70%, but for women it is around 30%. So there is a discrepancy between women and men employees. Of course, the number of people looking for employment, men and women, are different, but still unemployment affects women more. And in the progress report, some structural reforms are suggested to change this situation. And also another issue of criticism is the discrepancy between the wages. A suggestion to increase women employment is establishment of care centers for children and aged people. And under the influence of the recent conjunction in Turkey, Syrian women has started to become an issue for Turkey and for unemployed women in Turkey. Okay, what are the unsolved problems? Early aged marriages, problems at the criminal justice institutions, and violence are the problems that are mentioned in the progress reports. And the last report, which is very striking, children who are living under the poverty level are highlighted. There are more than 12 million children living under the level of poverty, which of course directly influences women. Of course, women's attendance to the labor life is an issue of gender equality, and education, attendance to education is also an issue. For the primary level education, it is becoming a less problem, but for the secondary education, we still see it as a problem. UN makes puts importance to this issue, and UN has some development objectives, and one of the priority of those objectives is to provide education for all members of the society, both men and women, and also providing more active roles to women in the society will be a natural result of this education. When we look at the progress reports, we see that there is a highlight in improving the capacity to fight against domestic violence against women. And in relation to domestic violence, there are conventions, and the suggestions are being made to upbring Turkey's situation according to those conventions. Some legal arrangements is a necessity, restructuring of institutions, and also we are all familiar is to more actively using the existing law. Distinguished guests, an indispensable condition of social democracy, gender equality is a must, and we need to restructure the society. And for this purpose, we need to have a multi-party revolution, let's say, including the educational policies, health policies, financial issues, and political issues needs to be dealt with at the same time. So on behalf of myself, I see our share as follows: local administrations' attitudes different stakeholders' views like NGOs, universities, projects to bring all these entities together, especially NGOs supporting women entrepreneurship, and additionally academicians who are working in gender equality, and also sine qua non voluntary work. Thanks to all these factors, these issues will remain on our agenda, and these are all equally very important. While I'm getting towards the end of my speech, I hope this is going to be a very beneficial meeting, and I again would like to thank you for sparing your time and listening to me patiently on behalf of University of 9 Eylül. Thank you very much, Ms. İlkay Taş. As the facilitator of this conference, I just received a warning from my colleagues. I forgot to introduce myself. I am the lawyer of Women Counseling Center of Konak Municipality. Now I'd like to invite the head of the İzmir Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Revi Akturak, on the floor for his speech.
Chairman of the Assembly of Izmir Chamber of Commerce.
Distinguished Mayor of Konak, His Excellency Chancellor of Italy, and distinguished academicians from 9 Eylül University, Miss Assistant Professor Gökhan Ertürk, and all those guests that I have forgot to mention them by name. I would like to welcome you all. Of course, this is an honor for us to host you in our chamber as the chairman of the Assembly. I am the chairman of the Assembly of Izmir Chamber of Commerce, and also I'm the chairman of the Izmir Italian Commerce Association. So this project means a lot to me, and of course the issue is women, which makes it even more important. Of course, in domestic life, domestic violence against women is very prevalent, and among other forms of violence, we can say that this is a form of violence which is sort of invisible. Beating, pressure, inhuman attitudes, they are all being experienced in private relations. That's why we do not see them as the problem of the society. So any form of violence actually between partners, as women are being accepted as the property of the male partner, this is not seen as a problem, and sometimes it is not being sanctioned. I believe 7 to 8 years ago, in our office is located in Alsancak, and it was an evening in Alsancak. We heard something outside. I went out. As a classical Turkish man, I was curious to see what's going on. I saw a woman being beaten by a man, and there are people around them, and nobody is doing anything. And I said, "What's going on?" And they stopped me. They stopped me by saying it's her husband. Of course, this can be the woman's husband, but we should have stopped the man. But unfortunately, people see it almost as a right of husband to beat the wife. So, in Turkey, as we see, domestic violence against women is not a success issue. According to the results of the Ministry of Family, we know that domestic violence is very common, both in the form of physical violence and also emotional violence. But I don't believe in those percentages given by the ministries, because they are only reported ones. There are so many examples, so many cases that abstain reporting due to some cultural restrictions. Of course, this problem exists in Turkey, and I think this problem is a major problem in underdeveloped countries. Every one woman in all 4 women is being exposed to physical or emotional violence, they say, in Europe. But in Europe, maybe women are more courageous to report those violence cases. But in Turkey and in countries like Turkey, we see this less. In Turkey also we say that in 1 in every 4 families there is domestic violence. According to Italian statistics, according to 2014 statistics, the number of women murders has been decreased by around 11% when compared to 2013 figures. I hope we will achieve the same percentage. We have seen many cases in Turkey. Some protests have occurred. For instance, in Özgecan case, we wore black ties. We did whatever we could do, but this was what we could do, unfortunately. So in front of our president, I would like to congratulate you once again, because this has been an enormous effort. So congratulations. In Italy, more than 6 million women was exposed to violence once in their lives. As I mentioned, this 4 Women project conducted under the leadership of Liyakat Association. Some training seminars were organized, some study visits took place to Turkey and Italy, and also some surveys took place targeting victims of domestic violence in Izmir. So these are all very important activities. All these activities actually raise the awareness of women in relation to their legal rights. So these are very crucial activities. So within this context, I can say that the social value of these kind of activities are very high. Of course, including women actively and fruitfully into the social life is very necessary, not only for women but for the whole society. A happy family life and women's financial contribution to the families, to their families, is very important. Actually, I was thinking a couple of minutes ago, this is very correct, because mother and woman figure is at the core, at the heart of the society. It is so internalized, actually. We cry out as mother when something happens to us, when we are afraid of something, when we have pain, actually. We call for our moms, not for our dads. So in order to have this healthy society, the figure of mother should be a happy notion, so that women can provide this healthy and peaceful environment for their families, for their children. So a happy family life and women's economic contribution to their families is one of the major factors of constituting a healthy society. But of course we know that women's rate of participating into social life, we are not at a good level. Of course, when compared to Saudi Arabia, we might be good. They held elections for the first time last weekend, and they could enter to the municipal assemblies for the first time. But I think we should extend our gratitude to Mustafa Kemal Atatürk at this time for provision of these rights to women in Turkey. Every 3 women among 10 women at the age of employment, the ratio of these women in active life is very low when compared to men. And many of these women actually are working as family workers without being provided a random wage. And some unregistered, we can talk about a great ratio of unregistered women employees, unfortunately, in Turkey. In agricultural industry, the ratio is 93% 6. So this is also sad, actually. When you visit a village, for instance, around Izmir, for instance. Actually, I was doing some agricultural activities once. For instance, there are living 300 people, and there are 6 coffee shops. They're all full with men, but you cannot see any women because women are working at the gardens and fields, which is very harsh on women, of course. And unfortunately, in the business world, we do not see as much women as we need to see. In parallel to having more women in the business life, I believe crime and violence and psychological pressure will go down. I believe that many women in society are accepting the violence because they do not have their financial independence. Within the framework of all these issues, I'd like to congratulate the president of Liyakat Association, Ms. Berkay Eskinazi, and all those partners who put their efforts for this goal, and thank you very much for providing me this opportunity to have this speech on this occasion. Thank you.
And now Luigi, the Italian consul of Izmir, Luigi Iannuzzi. Liyakat Derneği'nin başkanı, sayın profesörler ve İzmir Ticaret Odası Meclis Başkanı, Belediye Başkanı, sayın hanımefendiler ve beyefendiler, günaydın. Öncelikle sizi bu etkinliğin organizasyonu nedeniyle tebrik etmek istiyorum ve size de bu etkinlikte kısa bir konuşma yapmak üzere beni davet ettiğiniz için teşekkür ediyorum. İtalyan sivil toplum örgütü partnerleri kendileri kişisel olarak buraya gelmemeye karar vermişler ne yazık ki. Fakat başka bir şekilde bu etkinliğin başarısına biz katkıda bulunacağız. Bugün ben burada bulunuyorum. Onların, yani İtalya'nın katkısını buraya getirmek üzere buradayım ve kadın haklarının korunması açısından. Evet, kadınlara karşı olan şiddet, İtalyan dış ticaretinin insan hakları, İtalyan dış işlerinin insan hakları açısından çok önemli bir konusudur. Ve buradaki konuşmacılar kadınların hakları ile ilgili çeşitli konuları ele alacaklardır. Öncelikle kadınların yetkilendirilmesi ve toplumsal cinsel eşitlik. İtalyan hükümeti kadınların sosyal ve ekonomik hayata katılımları için çeşitli önlemler almıştır ve yine toplumsal cinsiyet, kadınlara karşı cinsiyet, toplumsal cinsiyet eşitliği ve aile içi şiddete karşı savaşmaya karar vermiştir İtalya. Biz kadınlara karşı şiddetin bir çeşit ayrımcılık olduğunu biliyoruz ve bu da kadınların tam olarak haklarını kullanmalarını engellemektedir. Ne yazık ki bu bir dünya problemidir ve bu bütün ülkeleri, bütün toplumları, kültürleri etkilemektedir ve bütün kadınları etkilemektedir. Bu kadınların geliri, statüsü, ırkı ve etnik menşesi ne olursa olsun. İkincisi olarak ise şimdi tam olarak bahsettiğim konuyla ilgili olarak İtalya'nın bu aile içi şiddete karşı önlemler almakta olduğundan bahsetmiştim. Ve İtalya'da İstanbul Konvansiyonu'nun yürürlüğe girmesi konusunda da çok önemli bir rol oynamıştır. Ve bu da ilk bu olguyu ele alan ilk uluslararası hukuk enstrümanıdır. İlk bağlayıcı hukuk enstrümanıdır ve normatif bir çerçeve yaratacaktır kadınların şiddetten korumak için. İtalya'da bu Belem Para Konvensiyonu'nu imzalamıştır. Bu da ilk Avrupa ve Amerikalı olmayan ülkeler ilk defa böyle bir enstrümanı imzalamıştır. Şimdi üçüncüsü ise İtalya'nın yine çok önemli bir rol oynadığı konu ise kadınlar, barış ve güvenliktir. Evet, İtalya'nın yine çok önemli bir rol oynadığı diğer bir alan ise konu kadınlar, barış ve güvenlik. Ve bu da kadın hakları çerçevesindeki en önemli bir konudur. Tabii ki kadınlar bütün savaş olduğu alanlarda da en büyük mağdurlar olmaktadırlar. Ve bu da çok önemli bir problemdir ve mutlaka ele alınması gerekmektedir. Ve şunun da vurgulanması gerekiyor ki kadınların barış sürecine ne kadar katkıda bulunduğunu ortaya koymak, bunu vurgulamak çok önemlidir. Ve aynı zamanda çatışma durumlarından, savaş durumlarından sonra sürdürülebilir bir gelişmeye de kadınların katkısı çok önemlidir. Dördüncüsü ise İtalya kadınlarda cinsel organın kesilmesi ya da bu organa hasar verilmesine karşı bir kampanyada önde gelen ülkelerden biri olmuştur. Ve aynı zamanda çocuk yaşta kızların evlendirilmesine karşı savaşmada da önde giden lider ülkelerden biri olmuştur. Ve 2012'de ilk defa olarak Birleşmiş Milletler Genel Kurulu bir karar vermiştir ve bu kadınların, kızların cinsel organların kesilmesine konusunu ele almıştır ve geçen sene ise ilk defa olarak yine Birleşmiş Milletler Genel Kurulu ilk önemli kararı vermiştir kızların erken yaşta evlendirilmesine karşı. Evet, bu iki olgu kadın haklarının ihlalini ciddi bir şekilde ihlalini temsil etmektedirler. Bundan başka bu kadar kötü bir olgunun toplu açıdan çok önemli bir etkisi vardır. Çünkü bunlar kadınların kendi kişiliklerinin gelişmesini engellemektedir ve topluma katkıda bulunmalarını kadınların engellemektedir bu olgular. Evet, İtalya birkaç yıl önce çok geniş kapsamlı bir yasa çıkarmıştır. Kızların, genç kadınların cinsel organların kesilmesi problemini çözebilmek için ve bu da Birleşmiş Milletler Genel Sekreterliği tarafından en iyi uygulama olarak kabul edilmiştir. Bu yasama bu olguyu engellemeye çalışmaktadır ve aynı zamanda mağdurlara yardım etmeyi ve onları iyileştirmeyi amaçlamaktadır. En son olarak şunu da söylemek istiyorum ve İtalya aynı zamanda 750 bin euro ile İtalya Birleşmiş Milletler fonuna katkıda bulunmaktadır ve bu da adolesans ergen kızların için eylem adlı bir konudur bu ve biz teknik ve finansal yardımda bulunuyoruz. Afrika'daki çeşitli ülkelere, Asya'da ve Latin Amerika'daki ülkelere yardımda bulunabiliyoruz. Buradaki girişimde kadınların yetkilendirilmesini istiyoruz ve kızların erken yaşta evlenmesini engellemek istiyoruz. Ve İtalya özellikle Burkina Faso ve Etiyopya ve Mozambik'te çok önemli faaliyetlerde bulunmaktadır. Sonuç olarak şimdi size bütün anlattıklarım çok kısa bir özettir ve kadınların yetkilendirilmesi konusunun İtalya için ne kadar önemli olduğunu ve kadınlara karşı, şiddete karşı ne kadar önemli savaştığımızı size açıklamak istedim. Bu nedenle bu farkındalığı oluşturma etkinliğinde size katılabildiğim için son derece mutluyum. Sizin girişiminize başarılar diliyorum ve kadın haklarını yerine getirmek için yaptığınız bütün çabalardan dolayı sizi tebrik ediyorum ve teşekkür ediyorum. as a lawyer in the municipality, I am working now. I have been working with within the last 11 years. I've been working with the municipality as a lawyer for the municipality for the last 11 years, and we have now a female mayor at Konak, and she has established the directorate for women, and she has added a great momentum to the studies for women. I would like to give the floor to Sema Bektaş, who is the mayor of the district of Konak of Izmir. Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I would like to greet you with respect and love. And now, Konak Municipality is one of the partners of this For Women project, and I am representing this Konak Municipality, but at the same time I am a woman and I am coming out of the movement for women. And for tens of years, for decades, I have fought to do something for the interest of women, and of course we have achieved some success, but we have failed too from time to time everywhere in the world, in different races and beliefs and faiths, and also in different identities. Everywhere there is violence against women, there is a discrimination against women, and also there is no gender equality, there is gender mutilation, and we are always talking about women, and so we are talking about the problem of the discrimination of girls, that they cannot go to school, but there is nothing about the boys or men, because this is the vote of men. However, their vote is not a democratic vote, and this is only the vote of men. And when we talk about the vote of the men, then we cannot talk about democracy, or we cannot talk about an egalitarian system. We cannot talk about the human rights, and so that the gender equality has to be established, and so we have to make every effort in order to create this gender equality and to integrate women into the management status. And so we have conducted so many studies in order to contribute to peace and safety in the world, and for the human rights and democracy in the world. These studies are imperative for all these purposes, and now we are discussing only now the violence against women here. It is the domestic violence, violence on the street, violence at the workplace, and there is so we are working to eradicate this violence towards women, sexual, emotional, economic, physical violence. And in order to surmount all these problems, what do we have to do? One of the measures is the following. We have the local authorities, NGOs, universities, and the public authorities, they have to join their forces to combat against this problem. And we have to raise awareness about this issue, that this is a problem. And if you take up this issue as a problem, and when you call this issue a problem, and then so then the institutions will identify the measures to be taken. And it is only recently that we have started to define this violence, and there has been very long discussions about what violence is. For example, my husband has hit me only twice, and this is no violence, and it is very normal that he beats me, because he earns the money for our family. So the women are not aware of what violence is, and therefore awareness is to be raised that violence is something very which is very comprehensive. And then we have been aware that we have internalized the violence, and so there are so many things which have to be done. The laws have to be amended, some laws have been amended, however the laws have to be internalized and they have to be implemented, and all these can be achieved only through studies for raising awareness. And so as soon as we as soon as I became the mayor, I established the Department of Social Affairs and Women's Affairs. And my first visitor was Liaquat Association, and so we have discussed what we can do together with Liaquat Association. And of course, the creativity of the NGOs can be created by joining the forces. I think we have done very good things in 8 centers with the contributions of lawyers and psychologists. We have organized some events, and we have held some forums on the streets, and we have listened to different kinds of opinions from the people on the street. And so for the people to be able to express themselves, we created some new ways, some new instruments, and we have carried out some surveys, and some counseling services have been delivered to the women, and the women have been trained to be chefs and bakers so that they could have their own jobs. So, and the first steps have been made in order to create a big study, and I hope we can increase the solidarity between women so that we can then solve this problem. As the Consul has already said, the Istanbul Convention is a very important convention, and it is the success of the women's movement in Turkey, and so in Istanbul, a meeting was held, and it was held with the contributions and help of Yakın Ertürk, to whom we will listen very soon. And of course, there are so many works we have to do, and so we are yearning for a world where there will be gender equality. Welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so the opening speeches have been concluded. I would like to thank all the speakers, and they have used the time very efficiently. And now I would like to share an information with you. We have conducted all these studies. As you have watched in the presentation of Eskenazi, there are some institutions who deliver services with regard to violence against women, and some training courses for them have been organized. One of the institutions is the following. These are the policemen who are working at the police organization, and also so they were working in the Department for Women, and they have supported us really very much. And now we have a very good news, and so a department has been established with regard to violence against women and domestic violence at the police organization, and the representatives of this department are here with us, and I would like to thank them very much for their support. And of course, the services of the police organization against violence against women is very important, and so the police station is very important. And if the victims receive good services from the police station, and then they feel that they are being protected by the government. However, if the police station doesn't support it, then the women feel very helpless, and they think that the government, that the state, doesn't support them. And so I wish every success to this new department at the police organization. And now, as I have already announced, we have the key speaker here, and I'm very excited about this speaker, and I have always followed her studies at the press, and this will be for me for the first time that I will be able to listen to her, Professor Dr. Yakın Ertürk. So before inviting her, I would like to share her CV with you, and she's very modest, and so she has sent us a very short CV from Cornell University. She graduated from the Cornell Cornell University. She had her doctorate at the Cornell University in 1980, and until 2010 she has worked at the Middle East Technical University, and before that at the Hacettepe University, and also she has been working at the sociology departments of these universities. In addition to her academic studies, she also has worked at the rural development area between 1986 and 2003, and she has also conducted some international studies. One of them is the United Nations Research and Training Institute, and she was a president of this UN institution until 1999, and also she was the president of the United Nations, the Progress of Women, and also the special rapporteur of the United Nations regarding the violence against the women. And also in Kyrgyzstan she was a member of a committee until 2011, and the United Nations Human Rights Council, and also the independent investigation for Syria. She was a member there, and also between 2009 and 2013 she was also in a committee of the European of an institution against torture, and also she was a founding member of the Association for Refugees. Yakın Ertürk, we will be happy to listen to you.
Okay, we have 45 minutes. We will see whether they'll be bored or not. We can spare our time for question and answer. It's up to you. Before all, thank you very much for inviting me to this very important meeting to Liyakat Association and to their partners, and I hope the continuation of these projects. First of all, I'm very sorry that our Italian colleagues could not make it, and last week there was another meeting in Istanbul, and it was cancelled due to security issues. On behalf of myself, I was very happy because I gained 3 days, but of course it was at the same time a sad experience. But I think we need to make this point as well. In many places of the world, I have been to many dangerous places in the world, I think we can say that violence has become global. And seeing violence in the form of terrorism is not predictable. Very recently, in the middle of France, there was a security issue, we all know. So I think in Turkey, security is not more of an issue for foreigners when compared to any other parts of the world. Of course, there are some insecurities for our citizens, but I'm not going to go into that. One more thing. It may sound as if I am making points against Italia, but actually I'm trying to say is I'm very well aware of our Italian colleagues who are fighting for the women's rights. They have been keeping their resistance, and they have fought very strongly, and they have been examples to many women all around the world. So we are grateful to Italian women, and I'm sure that they will carry on in this way by taking men on their side as well. I think this man-women equality is not an issue for women only. This is an issue for men as well. Violence against women is a very popular issue. We're all talking about this issue. But when we look at this issue from international perspective, because I'll try to look at this issue from international window, the speakers before me talked about some country-based issues. We go in very deep into that issue. We're making analysis, we are carrying out studies, so we are making progress. But when we say domestic violence against women, as speakers before me mentioned, is accepted, has been accepted as a special issue, and as a result, international women-men equality from this perspective, actually this has been on the agenda at a very late time. In 1945, with the establishment of the United Nations, this has become an issue, and it was not a very strong women platform who put that on the agenda. Actually, it was not a women action, actually, when compared to today's women actions. It was just a platform bringing together women from upper levels of the society, but their establishment, their founding this platform in the United Nations framework was important, and as of 1946 women activities has started, and we have reached up to today, and many issues and those issues have we assume that these issues have existed for a very long time, but actually this goes back to that time of the establishment of that platform. So women sharing the same thinking, same goals for the equality of women, who are acting commonly for this goal of women-men equality. As a result of all these efforts, we have a very comprehensive gender equality regime at the international level. Okay, but why does violence has become an issue so late? To me, the milestone is 1990s, but what is the characteristic of 1990s? Let's go back to our recent history, because 90s is a very interesting decade. There are actually this is an artificial division. We sociologists like these kind of decisions, but there is a kind of rationale behind those, but they're not very strict divisions. But 90s will remind us some very important issues, like the distribution of Soviet association in political terms, which was a major development. There has been conflicts, some new borders were drawn, so it was a very dynamic period, which was unexpected. We had Gulf War, and when this war started, Palestinian actually were waiting for Russian to save them. Syrians actually received it now, but I think this needs analysis why they didn't receive it 90s and Syrian received it now. I think these are issues we all need to think about. In parallel to all these parallel developments and political developments, economically the world system has changed. There is this notion of globalization, which was more, which has started becoming obvious in the 1970s. This global economy has become very obvious in the 90s, and Turkey has experienced all these developments very strongly and in its particular way. In 80s with Özal government, with all these privatization policies, Turkey used to become a very closed economy and started to become a very open economy. We all remember all those days. I remember I was a university student I was traveling to abroad on train because that was the most reasonable way of traveling. We were visiting some student camps, and some actually friends could actually hide money, their hidden money in their shoes wherever they can find, because there was this law of protecting Turkish currency. This might be very difficult to understand for young people now because it is so natural to access foreign exchanges at those times, but it was the rule of those days. So the world is changing, but the framework that I'm trying to draw is in 90s we actually do not see the world order that we used to have in the Cold War time. The world started to change. In these nation-state periods, at this period, in the Cold War period, nation-state was the most important element. We, as the university students, we were protesting for independence. I don't hear that independence word much when during the protest. I hear other words. Independence was an important issue both in economic terms and political terms, was very important, but today we do not see the same topic on the agenda. There are pros and cons of it. We're just stating the situation at the moment. But of course, all these transformations were very painful. Wars have changed their form. Actually, at the time, we do not see soldiers of two conflicting countries fighting with each other. We see fights at the backyards. I think in the 1993 internal wars made a peak. Today this figure has went down a little, but I think the number is around 30. In 30 countries there are internal wars. Of course, with those internal conflicts there are many human tragedies are being experienced, like these Syrian refugees all around the world. In parallel to all these actually the two wars are very important in terms of women's rights and violence. Maybe you're asking yourself why I'm talking about all these issues. There are two major reasons for this. One is in 1990s, in this period of conflict, something was very important for women. There were two wars. One of them is the former Yugoslavia, and the other is the war in Rwanda. In both wars, violence against women was used as a strategical tool within the war, within the conflict. I'm not going to go into detail. We've discussed it in those days, and we keep discussing those. We all know about those, but in front of all these experiences, all these facts, this issue of rape, which is being seen as a part of war and conflicts. When you go through, for instance, history books, you see it as just a note how many women were raped during that war, just this much. But I think women actions has become more mature throughout the time, and in parallel to all those negative developments, human rights has become an important issue, and creation of a legal platform as United Nations for fighting against violence against women opened up a new era for this prevention of domestic violence, and all these efforts has become very effective throughout the time. And in the 19th, some international conferences were held within the framework of United Nations. Actually, one of them was held in Istanbul, Habitat Conference, for instance. Maybe some of you will remember it. I went to that conference, and the whole city turned into a workshop. There was such a nice enthusiasm, and actually we all felt that nothing can stop us. In 1995, 30,000 people participated. So at that period, it was the period of fighting for the rights, and it was also the period of conflict. So this was the period of some conflicts, and this women activities have been effective. Actually, these women activities and environment activities are shown as examples of effective activities. And as a result of all these efforts, in 1990s, violence against women has become a major issue in the agenda. I think you all know about SEDAM. This is the Convention on Preventing All Types of Discrimination Against Women. This was ratified actually in 1978-9, and when it was being negotiated, violence was being intended to be involved in that convention. But one of the members of that convention, actually one of the political leaders, actually, for instance, I remember from the records that this was articulated by the representative of UK, and they said that this is a private issue. So this is why this was not included in that convention, but women did not give up, and they carried on fighting. After 12th September, as you know, when all the developing activities were demolished, they started over. Actually, they did not pay more attention in the 80s. They said that let them think, let them discuss. And actually, in the 80s, the first protest after that 12th September was held by women. And they did not actually projected that this is going to reach that far. They were laughing at those times, but now they cannot laugh. This is our achievement, and we are proud of it. Up to 2006 in Turkey, state was not actually articulating domestic violence against women. Actually, when I was selected as a reporter in Ankara, NGOs organized a meeting for celebration. And at that time, Güldal Hanım, minister responsible for women activities, and the mayor Gökçek was there. And at that time, we told them that General Directorate of Women's Status said that domestic violence against women should be included in their agenda, and Güldal Hanım opposed to that, said that this has nothing to do with their public activities. But after 2006, this issue has become broader. We were holding meetings. Güldal Akşit, I'm talking about her. I like her much. Actually, this is not about people. This is not about individuals. This is about the ways of thinking at that time. But, of course, SEDAW reports were being announced, and these put Turkey into a difficult situation in terms of some challenging views. For instance, at one time, I remember SEDAW report was announced, and some suggestions were mentioned at a meeting.
So our mothers are lying in our heart. These are the classic words, and all of them were so shocked. And in Norway, 1 out of 4 women are subjected to violence, and our deputies were very happy about that. And they said, even in very civilized countries, such a thing is happening. And today, such statements are not being made anymore. And if there are some people who think like that, they are not open about it. In 2006, as you know, there was a commission was established in order to investigate the honor killings. And so this honor, the word honor, I use always in parentheses. I don't like this word at all. And however, this is what Turkey deserves. And so, as a result of this study, Prime Minister has published a directive, and so with this directive, with this circulation, and so all the government institutions have been given the task to deal with domestic violence, violence against women. And despite this fact, today, everywhere, we are talking about violence against women. And that's why the 1990s were very important for us because it was an era where violence came into official documents. The SEDA committee and the mayor, we have talked about the mayor Feride Acar. The mayor has talked about Feride Acar, and we, 2 women from Middle East Technical University, we had the honor to participate in such platforms. And Feride is still a member of the SEDA committee, and so she has been the chairman of the Istanbul committee. And the SEDA committee consists of 23 independent experts, and in 1992, adopted the recommendation decision number 19. What is this? That the violence is described as a discrimination towards women. What is a contract? So the party to this contract, the country which is a party to this contract says, when I sign this contract, that means that I will fulfill all the provisions of this contract. And the 99th article of the Constitution says that international law is superior to local law, domestic law. And of course, this is not being implemented, and there are still struggles. For example, the surname problem is still being discussed, and Izmirian lawyer Ayten Pekili has fought for that, and this 19th article has not been created automatically. And if a problem has not been described in the contract, then this country doesn't have such a liability. So, legally, no liability. So, and when there is a reporting, and when they are accountable to the committee, they don't say anything about this issue. However, the recommendation resolution number 19, although it is not as binding as the items of the contract, it confers some tasks to the governments, and so 180 countries, more than 180 countries are signatories of SEDA, and so they have to compile reports about what they have done against the violence against women. These reports are very important for us. It is easy to be accountable outside. However, if we can use this instrument in order to be able to be accountable also in our country, then we can have a very dynamic relationship between NGOs and the government. In 1993, there was the Vienna Conference, Human Rights Conference, and for the first time at this conference, the violence against women has been described as a human rights violation, and it has been recorded as such. And this was a very interesting conference. Why? Because women have established informal courts, and at these courts from different parts of the world, some victims have come to these courts, and so that very important problems have been displayed. One of them is the following, and it is called comfort women. This means sexual slavery. As you know, the Japanese army during the Second World War. So they fulfilled the sexual needs of their soldiers by raping especially the Korean women, and so these women were condemned to sexual slavery. And in 1993, it is informal courts, the Japanese government was sentenced. However, up to now, the Japanese government has never given any excuse, no apology, nothing. Also no damages. And of course, most of these women do not live here, do not live anymore. However, their grandchildren are continuing this struggle. And so, can you imagine the strength of this human rights movement? And so, the Human Rights Convention was signed in 1948. However, until 1990s, it was shelved almost. However, over the world, some very significant changes have taken place. And so, supranational civil community movements have started, and so that this was instrumental in disclosing all the human rights violations in the past, and so Turkey has been facing such problems too. But this is so like with the human rights, and so whenever there is a search for right, and so we have to develop an attitude towards that, and it should be a valid attitude. In 1993, there was a conference, and so this conference gave rise to two different developments. In 1993, the General Assembly of the United Nations has adopted the declaration against the declaration with regard to violence of women, and so this is a declaration, and this is an international declaration. And apart from this 1993 declaration, there is another instrument which describes the violence. There is no other document apart from this which describes this violence, which takes up this violence. And Istanbul Convention is, of course, this is only a regional initiative. And the second development took place in 1994. And it's a Commission for Human Rights, and so there was a task was created in order to report the violence against women, and it was in 2004 that I became a reporter. And so in the United Nations there are 40 different rapporteurs, and these rapporteurs are monitoring and auditing in different areas of human rights. However, these are independent experts, and so you are not a representative of a country, and so you are using your own conscience and your own knowledge and your own responsibility. So you do this auditing with your own conscience, and so this is taken seriously. In some countries, if they don't like your report, then you might get into a conflict, and this is what I have experienced. And if I hadn't experienced such a conflict, then I would think that I am not doing my job well. And so the reporters, they conducted 3 tasks. First of all, they visit the countries, and I visited 17 countries. And among these countries, El Salvador, Guatemala. So I have started with these Central American countries, and then Turkey, Sweden, the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and then Central Asian countries, Congo Republic, Ghana. And so these were very different countries. These were countries with very different legal system and social structures. And in these countries, so I could observe the similarities or differences with regard to women's rights. And of course, the rapporteur has got to compile a report about this observation in these countries, and then this is verbally delivered at the Council of Human Rights. And the representative of the relevant country has the right to criticize you, and so that it can be really very very harsh dialogues. And the rapporteurs, they prepare also some thematic reports. So, for example, with regard to a certain topic, what do we have to know more? For example, one of my reports, I'm not a lawyer, however, due diligence. So due diligence was very important for us. And of course, what is the due diligence liability of a country? I asked this question when I prepared my report, and this was very interesting. And independently from me, the due diligence movement has started, and it still continues. And after this report, in this report, I had underlined two important issues which were with regard to human rights. One of them was economic policies and what sort of inconsistencies have been created by the liberal economy with regard to women's rights. And the second issue was the cultural narrative. And this cultural narrative is something very widespread. Wherever I go, they always talk about the authorities of the governments would talk about their culture. And what sort of a culture is this? Everywhere we see the same culture. And at the end, I warned them as follows. I said to them, you shouldn't be unfair to your culture. And this culture looks like an universal patriarchic culture. And and I think that we shouldn't adopt such a culture. And thirdly, and of course, I have written down different reports. And thirdly, and this is one of the most important tasks of the rapporteurs, independent people or groups. So an individual complaint application. And with regard to human rights, this instrument is being used not very frequently for torture, for example. So a torture rapporteur would receive 300 complaints a year, and I would receive only 80 complaints from all over the world. And these complaints would come to me only through my visits in the country, that I would then encourage the people to deliver their complaints. And of course, they have been compiled in reports and they are being disclosed to the public. And most of the issues which I have been telling to you are available in my book, of which the title is the violence which doesn't know any borders. And I have also taken up the countries I have visited in this book. And today, and the fourth rapporteur is working, and I think this issue of being a rapporteur will continue, and we wish that this task would be unnecessary, redundant in the future, but I don't think that it will be redundant in the near future. In 1994, and the Beijing conference was held. Is there anyone who was at this Beijing conference? So the women's movement get ages really. So in the past, when I asked this question, so 20 years ago or 10 years ago, when I asked this question, so many people would raise their hands. And the Beijing conference was the fourth women's conference. It started in 1975 in Mexico, and afterwards in Copenhagen, Kenya, Nairobi, and the last one in Beijing. So the women wanted to have a fifth conference, and especially the young women, they wanted to have such a conference, and they are saying we have never experienced such a thing, and we want to be within such a dynamic agenda. But will you believe me, there are so big concerns with regard to human rights today, and if there is a fifth conference and if some texts are open to discussion, and then we have the concern that we would even lose our present existing rights, and therefore the women are not organizing such a conference. And on the other hand, the countries, they don't want to pay for such initiatives, and although they have signed the Istanbul Convention or CEDAW, but now they want the countries, they want to spend their money for something else. And of course, this conference has the following importance. As you know, there are 20 critical areas which have been described, identified. 3 of them are the following: violence against women, the human rights of women, and also women at war conflicts, at areas with war conflicts. And so these are now on the international agenda. And these are the oldest, historically oldest problems. However, today, violence against women has been recognized and acknowledged at every area. And now I will talk about 2 more developments. In 1998, so the Rome status, which created the International Court, so it was also a revolutionary initiative with regard to violence against women, because so international crimes are sentenced by this court, and rape is being identified, described as a war crime, and also yes, I think the lawyers agree too, and this is a wonderful step, and this is a great achievement, this Rome status, because rape is still at the national law, and at the courts it can not be easily proven. And I think 15 years ago, at the Italian court, the magistrate, the judge, saw this rape case, and then the judge sentenced that this was not a rape. Why? Because this woman had some jeans on, and so women who put on jeans, she cannot be raped, and she was willing it to the sexual intercourse. She wanted to have this sexual intercourse because she is putting on these jeans, and such sentences take place also in our courts. However, even in the most developed countries, we can see such problems which still continue. However, the Rome status discounted this this consent issue of women, and so the rape is not dependent on the consent of the women, and this is a humanitarian crime, and therefore this is a wonderful step forward with regard to gender equality and justice. And in 2000, the most serious organ of the United Nations, and this is the Council of the Security, and the Women, Peace and Safety. So this resolution has been accepted, and I was present at that time there in 2000, and there were so many resistances to that, and just like in 1970s, they said this is not the topic of the Council of the Security, and this has nothing to do with women. These were their justifications they put forward, and they were very resistant to this resolution, but at the end this resolution has been adopted. And since 2000, the Council of the Security continues to take such similar resolutions. There are 7 resolutions with regard to peace, women and security. And of course, each of them are the result of a big struggle, and these developments have been achieved only through great efforts and compromises and fights of people for many years.
In all countries, in this way or other, some activities are taking place. Actually, the president of the chamber is left, and he has given the Saudi Arabia example. Actually, I was a lecturer for 3 years in Saudi Arabia. In 2008, I visited the country as a reporter. And in Geneva, when I told them that I want to visit your country, actually I was being naughty. I knew that they're not going to accept me. They invited me actually because they have ratified in 2000 and they provided their first presentation in 2008, and I visited the country 10 days after that report was being announced, and the issue of women was a big issue in those days, and of course a visit by a reporter revitalized the issue once even more. And of course when these issues are being discussed, actually small or big controversies are discovered, and some new negotiations, some new discussions are opened. Of course, our connection with international law is just an input, and how we use it is up to us. 10th article of the Constitution has actually been amended by referring to setup, and we were sitting at the balcony in the Grand National Assembly. We watched it. What is that? Article 10 of the Constitution is equality. In the former version, our Constitution used to say that women and men are equal. But SEDAP suggested that this should be changed. Actually, women asked for more, but at that time we had Cemil Çiçek as the Minister of Justice. He referred to Article 93 and he said that this would be enough, and the changed version, the amended version is this: women and men are equal and the state is obliged to assure this equality. So if you are the state, if you hold this authority, you need to make sure that this equality exists. So this actually gender inequality goes so deep in history. Of course, ensuring equal opportunity is not enough. We asked for some temporary precautions, but these were not accepted. But we need to say that human rights is an area of fight. Those who are recorded are our achievements. Those who are not recorded are our engines. They keep us running, actually. And you actually have 5 minutes left. So if you could wrap it up in 5 minutes, we will have time for question and answers. Okay, that's the actual problem. Actually, I put up a slide. If I push on that button, would it be on the screen? Just a visual aid to show you the framework that I tried to explain you so far. Okay. This is such an issue of resistance, this issue of violence. So this is what I have been explaining so far. I talked about the Security Council decision, and here we see the reportership, and here we see the SEDAF Convention, and these are some main other conventions. And after Istanbul Convention, we are thinking whether there will be another global convention on global scale. This is still being discussed. I have some restrictions in my mind about it. I'm not going into that. Okay, the issue is why we're talking so much about violence. All the NGOs, they are conducting programs on violence. EU funds are being spent on violence. State is seeing violence as a main item in their agenda. So what has happened? Why we started all of a sudden discussing about violence? Is there more violence, or we are more aware of it? Okay, why? How do you know that? Do you know the reality? You say that I have beaten up so much. Of course, awareness is an issue. As a result of so many policies, of course, we are more aware of the issue of violence. We cannot neglect this reality, but I'm also curious whether there is a raise in the volume of violence. Of course, we cannot reflect it in figures, but honestly, I think what is more important is how we see violence. Okay, leaders say that there is awareness, there is no increase in the violence, there is awareness, but of course this is what they claim. I'm not going to oppose this, but I think some questions should be asked. When we say violence against women, I keep hearing, oh, these poor women, we need to protect them. Okay, because women are poor, they are vulnerable, they need protection. So our police need to be mobilized to protect them. Or these deviated men, alcoholic men, unemployed men, they are depressed and they beat women. That's why we need to rehabilitate men. And another statement which is very helpful. Violence against women are the products of some primitive cultures. So we are not one of those cultures. So we do not have these phenomena. Actually, when we, for instance, hear about honor killings, the first type of nation they think about is Muslim Eastern countries, and when we say honor killings in Turkey, we think about Southeastern Anatolia. So we isolate ourselves. I think these are all illusions. I think violence against women is a structural problem. This inequality between women and men is in the core of those patriarch communities. So actually this violence against women is a tool for men to control women. Actually, we can even say that authority has this in its nature. So if authority cannot continue with the consent, it will continue with violence, with pressure. And pressure invites violence. As pressure, violence invites when pressure invites violence, we can say that there is a dialect between these two notions. Of course, violence in general is the figures of violence is actually getting higher. I think there is more than awareness to it. So the authority actually cannot run itself with the use of those old notions, because women do not provide this consent. So, in terms of human rights, there are some new, some search for new ways, and also some economic limitations, and also on other types of violence and violence against women, there are increases. Of course, this should be seen as a hypothesis. Of course, I had some more issues to handle. I see people leaving the room, so they must be bored. This is very well known by all of us, this story, we know this. What do we see here? There is a target at the top, and we are trying to reach to that target. The man is stepping the ladder with a suitcase, but women, there are some factors pulling her down, and the ladder is not proper. So is this the problem, do you think? If, for instance, we mend the ladder, and if a man takes care of the children, is this going to be the end of the problem? No. What does this show us? This is showing us our liberal agenda. Actually, this is what we were going after so far. So, representation of women in a world system established by men. I'm against mainstreaming. I think we need to change this whole structure. This is the only way. So we need to ensure transformation to take care of this women-men inequality, and also as a result of the violence against women. So far what we have done was trying to find some solutions to the problems, but we need to go deep into the root to be able to eradicate the problem. Actually, this slide is not 100% reflecting my views, but as active individuals, we need to own our own destiny, and we need to establish a new gender regime. How this is going to be shaped, how this is going to add up to our vision, this needs to be further discussed and finalized. I think this is the question waiting for us. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much, Ms. Aytürk. Now, are there anyone who would like to ask questions?
Evet, arkada bir arkadaşım altı sokağa dökmeye ikna ediyor falan diye soruşturma.
Okay. I don't want to be prosecuted due to my slide, that's why I changed. Distinguished professor, thank you very much for all this information. As far as I can understand, this is a problem of education. This is a problem of the governments. We know these problems actually. But what should we do so that our women can reach up to the status of women who are living in civilized countries? What is your suggestion? Actually, I'm not taking civilized countries as models, because they have some very uncivilized manners as well. I think this is a global problem. But of course, political will is important. At international level, signing agreements is an issue of prestige, but this also brings a liability. So the states needs to be called to act in line with those agreements, those conventions, and of course we need an organized non-governmental organizations structure. Of course, Turkey has a long path to follow in terms of NGOs. We do not have a very long history of NGOs, but I think I see today a very important accumulation of intentions in terms of NGOs. Law is very important for many countries, and of course the importance of international mechanisms. I try to stress that, so we shouldn't be expecting a magic stick who is going to change us from outside. This is not an issue, but today we have an international system and we are part of that system. So in that system, in those group of states, we can use that system as a tool of putting pressure on our political administration. Fed up is no longer actually enough. There are many more mechanisms that we know of or we do not know. We need to know them better and we need to be able to use them better. This is a field of fight, and the area of fight requires us to be become more and more sophisticated with non-violent tools. For instance, with Russia, we are very good partners in many cases. But many of those cases that are being sent is about Kurdish cases, because their organization is much more strong. There was an Opus case. There was a woman killed in 2002. This is an example case in international law. So I think people with legal background to lead us, because we do not all have legal background. These lawyers, they have a very enormous system open to use, and we need to have strategic partners And I think we need to very carefully listen to what people say, what countries say. Some in Turkey actually family actually is almost replacing the word of woman. Actually, this is the same for international level as well. Gender is an international issue, so we are excluding the political perspective. So by not mentioning the word woman, they may say many things. So maybe you heard that women, children, people with disabilities, animals, environment, but these are all very important issues, but the quality of the violence against women is not the same with the violence against children. The source is different, the reasons are different. If we put all these issues in the same pot, in, for instance, one of those civilized countries in the Netherlands law system, domestic violence has become genderless. These are new traps. We need to be very well aware of these traps. Sometimes they come to us with some very progressive lecture, but their intention is not good. Our professor has provided with some very detailed information, but we do not want to tire her a lot. I may refer my book actually. I'm from Izmir Economy University. I enjoyed your speech. This is my area of interest. You must have heard of Evan Stark. What would be the reflections of this Evan Stark's study? I know this person actually because he has given a lecture, and he said that in terms of legal basis, he said that Turkey has a very strong basis, but at the same time there are many violence cases in Turkey. So, although there are very strict laws in Turkey, we cannot implement those. Why? I'm going to ask this, and I want to ask you about the feminist movement here. How do you evaluate feminist movement at Turkey? There are some groups actually for justice and for other things. So there is again a division in the feminist movement in Turkey as well. How do you think we will find a solution to this? If you don't mind, let's hear all the questions and wrap it up in the end. So the question is about feminist movement, and this other question was about despite the strict laws, why do we have violence? I'm from Gediz University studying on international law. So Professor Yakın Ertürk is very important for me because I studied at Queen Island University in the UK, and I worked in terms of provision of refugee status for potential honor killing victims. So when I went through the court orders for potential Turkish victims, especially the courts of Australia and New Zealand, actually they were referring to Professor Yakın Ertürk's reports, and they were providing the refugee status for applicants who are applying from Turkey for potential honor killing, but some other countries do not provide this status because they say that in Turkey there are legal arrangements, the legal framework is parallel to European and international law, so in Turkey state is willing to protect women, they say. But although the state is willing to protect women, the state is not able to protect women. This is an issue, and they reject it from the cultural perspective. This application is rejected due to some cultural frameworks. What do you think we can do? The legal side, we are working on it, but in terms of sociological part, what we can do, and also women in Turkey, they do not know that they have such an option. Both potential victims of honor killings, victims of potential early marriages, they are not aware that they can ask for a refugee status. In order to raise this awareness, we as the academicians, we are working on it, but I think what do you think we can do with NGOs? And I feel very lucky to know you. I didn't know that you were sitting next to me. I'm very happy to see you. Any more questions? It was a very enjoyable speech. Thank you very much. I'm the deputy head of the Liyakat Association. The Constitutional Court's recent decision on religious marriage. What do you think? What was the decision? It was again making a religious marriage official. So actually this was about official marriage was not has not become anymore a precondition for religious marriage. I think you're trying to say that the type of sanction has changed. Okay, I noted down the question as well. We will be responding the questions and then carry on with the coffee break. About the first question, feminist movement in Turkey. There is a serious division in the feminist movement in Turkey because women is not a homogeneous issue. So I use the term bumping masculinities. Ay neydi bu medeniyetler çalışması? Tamam, clash. They use the word clash of civilizations, but I use the word clash of masculinity actually. I'm not going to the details of that, but all the time in Turkey, men politics men use women in the politics. Head cover is one of them. Actually, women has gone over with that issue. But now we are talking about a very dangerous type of division at a very different level now. We shouldn't forget about the history of feminist movement, women movement. What is the meaning of gender equality? Actually, these fights were done years ago in Peking conference. If we forget about these and start over again, it is as if we are we are fighting with no basis. I was the head of the department who is the secretary for that Peking conference. At that time, there were discussions about justice, gender justice. But what is justice according to whom? If you do not ask these questions, you may deviate and you may not see that there is a deviation from the fight that women has been giving so far. So this recent history of women and female movement needs to be known very well. So And why do we still have violence despite the strict laws? Yes, the law is not being implemented. Gender discrimination is very obvious. Actually, we do not have to even mention it, though there are some deductions in the sanctions, and there are discussions about these deductions. And also, this mentality formation is not followed directly, automatically, with the changes in the law. For instance, when I ask, do you implement the law of fight against violence against females, and how do you implement those? Actually, in these kind of issues, our notion of right is not based on human facts. There are many religious and other cultural factors are involved. But of course, the changes, the amendments are done in the legal framework, but mentalities do not change in the same pace. There is this issue of every family should have 3 children. There are the issues of family protection. So these controversial statements actually make laws even more difficult to implement. About the refugees, I was very enthusiastic about hearing those. And what is the benefit of these rapporteurships? Yes, this is the benefit of being a reporter and writing those reports. From several parts of the world, we receive invitations to provide our opinions. For instance, a woman from El Salvador is applying to become a refugee to another country. Of course, I have been to El Salvador, but this does not make me an expert in the women's status in El Salvador. Of course, but we see that they are being used. So these mechanisms are being used. And the more we know about these new mechanisms, the better we use them. And in terms of these refugees, SEDAP has made a new suggestion. It was either last year or this year. It was about the refugees, and I was invited to the first discussion meeting. And I suggested that we should include the political intentions into these kind of discussions. There is a refugee research center. Actually, I'm working with them as well, so I want to further discuss this topic with you. About this constitutional court's decision. Actually, this is making the existing mentality more concrete. So actually this used to exist, but we did not use it. So we need to keep fighting. Thank you very much for these answers. Could you please stay where you are? Our president of the Liyakat Associations will be presenting you a small plate to remember today.
Ay, bu daha çok yoruldum, kusura bakma ya. Yarım saat çeviri yaptırdım sana. Ay bu sesin gitti. Sesin gitti.
Teşekkürler. Hocam sizi belediye başkanımızla
And also the mayor of Konak. Would you stay here, please? And we have a gift from the work the women who attend our courses have created for you. This is a gift for you. I want to say something, but I cannot hear her. The microphone is not on. Microphone is not on. I cannot interpret. So not 1,000 is necessary. You, the Izmirians, you are not aware of your strength in these cities now. So after freedom, you should be aware of that, and you should sustain this freedom further. Thank you very much.
Şimdi 15 dakikalık bir kahve
15 minutes of coffee break.
sonra
After 15 minutes, we will have Skype conference with Italy. See you. Bunu kapatalım.